The modern learning environment is a fast-paced and constantly changing one. Coping up with the current learning environment is tough, and some students may find it difficult to understand. This can be a common cause of boredom. Sometimes, the students are not able to link themselves to the study material or even with the live lectures. This will result in boredom. For some students there can be an inverse situation as well, where the material is too easy to understand for them, and they might find the same boring at times. Hence, boredom being inversely related to understanding and learning, we can say that some students are not challenged enough or are too challenged by the study material. Boredom amongst teens can be extremely harmful, as the same can result in drug abuse and gambling habits as well. As per a study, gamblers and drug addicts usually avoid getting bored and depressed by engaging themselves in gambling and drug abuse. However, boredom can bring out something creative as well. As per a study, in some cases, boredom can have some positive effects on people and can bring out the creativity hidden in them.
I need to make sure you understand how to get housing for next year. When you entered as first-year students this year, the school assigned you to a dorm and a roommate. But next year, as returning students, you'll choose both your roommate and your dorm. But whether or not you actually get to live in your first choice depends on what number you or your roommate draws in the lottery system. The system gives priority to the students who have been here longest. Fourth-year students get the first block of numbers. Third years get the second block, and second years, like you'll be, get the third. The lower the number you draw, the sooner you choose. Number 1 gets the first choice. Number 2 gets the second choice, and so on. You can use either your own or your intended roommate's number to make your room choice. If your roommate for next year has been at the school longer than you have, they'll be in a better block of numbers, and so will have a better number than any second-year student. But most of you will probably be rooming with other second-year students, and so neither of you may have a great number. You may not get into your first or even second choice. Of course, if you've made plans to live off campus, you don't need to enter the lottery at all. Dorm space will be especially tight this year because the dorms on North Campus will be closed for renovations. This means that those of you who draw the worst numbers won't be able to get dorm housing at all.
Today we are going to discuss how various technologies have reshaped people's lives, and in fact reshaped the whole industry over the period of time. Let's take a very small example of a pen, and how it has affected the whole writing industry. Initially, The writers used to use quill pens, which would require continuous refilling and sharpening. Hence, writing a novel or a book took a long time, and thus it led to a style of writing which seemed tedious and had ordinary sentences. Examples of the same can be seen as the great novelists of the 18th century, namely, Smollett, Richardson, etc., who had a simplistic approach in writing, though their books ran to extremely long. In the 29th century, fountain pens were invented which did not require constant refilling. Due to this, the quality of the material wrote improved immensely. The same can be seen in the works of Dickens and Thackeray. Later on, came the typewriter, a machine that took writing to the next level and gave a huge speed up to writing. Typewriters were greatly used by journalists. Dictating machines and tape recorders also changed the way the stories were told. Various novelists also complained that the writers had become too controversial with their content, and also their speech went on for a tedious length. An example for such long-winded novels can be taken as long novels of Henry James. Also, let's not talk about how the writing style has been affected by the computers, films, etc., or the lecture will go on for too long.
We've probably all wondered how a new word gets into the dictionary. Take the word doofus, for example, spelled D-O-O-F-U-S, meaning a stupid or incompetent person. This word, which has been around since the late 1960s in a slang sense, made it into the Merriam-Webster's Collegiate Dictionary only in 1993. Why did it take so long? Well, first of all, dictionary editors like to wait at least 3 years to be sure a word is going to last, especially a slang word. They don't want to put in a new word prematurely and then have to take it out in the next edition. But even for words that aren't slang, getting into the dictionary isn't easy. New words have to pass a lot of editorial tests, including how difficult or easy they are to look up. There's also a limit to how thick a dictionary can be, or how small its type can get before people feel they don't want to use it. Some words have to come out before others can go in. The Collegiate Dictionary adds about 10,000 words to every edition, but it takes out only a few hundred, so choices have to be made very carefully.
Let us talk about one of the greatest writers in the American literature, Hemingway. He can be considered as a kind of guide to a global vision of the American literature. He used to travel a lot, the same can be seen from his writing. A person can get a glimpse of the whole world by reading his work. Today we will be reading his book named So For Whom the Bell Tolls in the class. The book is about the Spanish Civil War. Hemingway himself also took part in the Civil War as a journalist, however, he got involved in various combat situations as well. Hence, it is really interesting to think that Hemingway was both a journalist and a novelist. Civil War would normally mean two groups fighting in the same region. However, it was more of an international war as Russia, Germany, and Italy were two part of it. Hence, it was multiple countries and groups coinciding in Spain and fighting.
Before starting our tour of Monticello, I'd like to give you some historical facts that might help you appreciate what you see today even more. Monticello was the very much loved home of Thomas Jefferson for over 50 years. Jefferson, who was of course president, was also a great reader and language enthusiast. He read widely on different subjects, including architecture. He wasn't formally trained in architecture, but as a result of his study and observation of other buildings, he was able to help design and build the house. He chose the site himself, naming the estate Monticello, which means little mountain in Italian. In fact, many of the ideas behind the design also came from the Italian architect Andrea Palladio, who lived in the 16th century and who had a great influence on the architecture of England. Jefferson, however, ignored one of Palladio's principles, that is, not to build in a high place. Monticello's elevation made the transportation of what was needed at the house, for example food, especially difficult. But the view from the estate would not be as spectacular if Jefferson had followed Palladio's advice. There really is no boundary between the house and the nature around it, and so Jefferson was able to look out on his beloved state of Virginia from this wonderful vantage point. Now we'll go on to Jefferson's library.
Let's revise what we started to study in the last lecture. We had a short brief about 3 topics. First of which was extrasolar planets. We will be talking of the same in today's lecture. Planets that orbit around a star, other than the Sun, are called as extrasolar planets or exoplanets. If you all remember, I told you the last time that these were not even known to exist a decade ago. These discoveries are a result of very recent developments in the field. So, you all might have a question, that why is it so hard to find these planets? Science fiction's folks find them all the time while roaming in their spaceships. To answer those kinds of questions, let me show a picture of a star named Sirius. It is the brightest known star and is also one of the closest star to us. Even though the Sirius is easily visible to the naked eye and is also the closest to Earth, it is about 10 light-years away. Hence, reaching there is technologically impossible, and searching for the planets orbiting to it seems to be the next impossible thing with the current technology.
This room is devoted to electric fish. The eel in the tank behind me can produce a strong jolt of electricity to stun its prey. But most of the fish in here produce only weak electrical impulses that are useful for navigating, locating food, and even for communicating. The knife fish is a good example. This fish navigates using tiny receptors in the skin that are sensitive to electrical impulses. The knife fish produces an electrical signal, and the receptors in its skin let it know when the signal is distorted by a tree root or some other obstacle, so it can go around it. Fish also use the ability to produce and detect electrical impulses to communicate. They can tell each other what species they belong to, how big they are, and whether they're male or female. We have a tank here that's specially equipped to convert the inaudible signals that fish produce into sounds you can hear when you put on these headphones. I urge you all to listen in when I'm done speaking. Now have a look at the electric rays. Rays are especially interesting to medical researchers because of the organs they use to produce electricity. These organs contain a chemical that carries signals from one nerve ending to the next, not only in rays, but also in people. By studying these organs, scientists hope to learn more about diseases that interrupt the transmission of impulses from one nerve to another.